Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And man, I can't believe that this actually works. Balance Druid, Beast Mastery, Hunter, Healer. This is a composition that I've managed to coerce some of my friends into playing. Maybe I had to bribe them, I'm not sure. Maybe I had to blackmail them, I'm not too sure, because this is a composition that you would otherwise think cannot possibly work. But I've actually had a fantastic time with it, with increasing amounts of success as we figure out how it works. One of the main reasons that I enjoy this composition so much is that it utilizes the new honor talent Starburst so well. And Starburst is going to allow your Starfall to summon down these bombs on the ground, of which your teammates can pick up, which is great as a hunter because they're highly mobile. And while they're being attacked by melee DPS, they can move towards the bombs, picking them up and getting massive amounts of damage. These bombs are hitting for 6 to 10,000 damage and knocking targets up into the air so that the hunter can then avoid the damage. With the consistent pressure from a Beast Mastery Hunter paired up with that, you are going to be launching people into the stratosphere, kind of like Team Rocket, really. And it's a lot of fun, especially good into these melee cleaves. And we all know that there's a lot of those. So if you're looking for a unique way to climb up the ladder right now as a Balance Druid or a Beast Mastery Hunter or Healer, I definitely recommend trying out this composition. It plays pretty straightforwardly. Your Hunter wants to try and land a trap on the Healer as much as possible, while you do as much damage to the single target from the Hunter, which can be any target really, because Hunters do so much damage. And the Balance Druid's job is to create pressure in multiple places and land Cyclones to deny kills, while maximizing their Starfall uptime to get as many bombs onto the battlefield. The bomb strategy is a lot more powerful against double melee DPS, but it can work against single melee DPS. Wouldn't recommend it if you don't have any melee DPS. So in this clip, we're facing Shadow Priest Warrior Restoration Shaman. Very powerful composition, very popular. You're going to see it a lot. And you can see already the start of the fight. You just want to keep as much damage onto the Priest and Warrior, and the Warrior is going to be our single target. And I immediately start the fight with all of my offensive cooldowns to put them on the back foot and try and get the Restoration Shaman pulled into the fight. In this matchup, I'm running Fairy Swarm. I opted for this instead of Thorns because they have multiple ways to purge Thorns. Using Fairy Swarm prevents the warrior from attacking because they're disarmed, and if you can use it before they're died by the sword, you can actually prevent them from accessing that defensive cooldown. That's what I tried to do in that attempt there with my Celestial Alignment, was disarming the warrior and then blasting him down with all of my cooldowns. Once the enemy team has kind of survived your cooldown window and survived your crowd control, this is where you're likely focusing on defense and getting your Starfalls going to try and get Starburst onto the ground. But without a freezing trap on the healer, you're not really too focused on trying to execute a kill. Now, this team has multiple ways to remove crowd control in the Restoration Shaman, so you may get frustrated by teams like this, and that's because of the Shadow Priest utility with the Mass Dispel. If you've noticed this to be the case, where your crowd control chains are just always being disrupted, just focus on dealing damage, focus on attrition. Beast Mastery Hunters and Balance Druids both deal some of the highest output damage in the game at the moment. And if your crowd control is disrupted, utilize a different one. So if your freezing trap is getting dispelled, then use Mass Entanglement Solar Beam. Your Shaman can follow up with Earth Grab roots as well on Mass Dispel, so that it really prevents the Shaman from moving. Chain those crowd controls into Cyclones when you're wanting to get aggressive. And here I use Fairy Swarm on the Warrior to try and prevent defensive cooldowns, but also to prevent them from attacking me, because I don't want to be in bear form or trying to avoid getting hit while the enemy shaman is crowd controlled, which can happen. The one main weakness or drawback of this comp is it can be a bit fragile, so you've got to always be careful. Here we've freezing trapped the shaman, so I want to cyclone the Shadow Priest and isolate the warrior. This removes that Mass Dispel utility, it alleviates pressure onto our team, and it really forces the warrior to run. In this particular setup, I'm running Necro Lord Balance Druid, and so our main focus target is the target that I always want to use Adaptive Swarm on, which is in this case the warrior. So I'm always targeting the warrior and trying to amplify my dots along the Beast Mastery's pets. Here I'm pinned by Spear of Bastion, which means I can't move, and my defense is going to be incredibly limited. I'm trying to power down the warrior, but honestly this is kind of a risky move to go one-on-one with the warrior here, and both teams end up having to use their Spirit Link totems, because just really powerful classes clapping together like that is going to be chaos. So Spirit Link Totems out of the way now means they won't have that to rely on later on. And I also use Mass Entanglement outside of the Solar Beam just as a route for the warrior. You want to make sure that you hit that 30 seconds afterward because you want it to be up immediately for your next solar beam. But cycling a mass entanglement in between solar beam is a great way to maximize its utility. Here I reposition with Starfall, and I'm just trying to summon bombs with it more particularly. And I also have been really enjoying running the Starfall talent that allows you to move while casting, so you can generate astral power while you're summoning bombs down to the ground. You can see one of those bombs right above the shaman's frame on Gladius. So if the warrior runs into that, they're going to take a lot of damage. Or if your teammates can pick up those bombs and then bring them to the target, that's going to be special delivery service. It can be a lot of fun to play around that. Although in this clip in particular, I'm not sure if you get to see it too much, but it definitely happens a lot. If you check me out on twitch.tv/Supatease, where I'm streaming this composition, you're really going to see the fireworks with that strategy in particular. But still, my main goal while the enemy team is turtling is just generating these bombs on the ground and casting as much astral power generation as possible while maintaining damage over time effects on both the priest and the warrior. And I'm really just relying on my hunter. And it was at this point where we kind of realized that this team is just going to kind of sit behind the pillar and try and avoid pressure. So rather than sitting on our damage and holding it and waiting for crowd control, we just start launching it. And look at the pressure. The warrior's at 10% running around the corner. And this is what I mean by don't get too frustrated when you can't land your crowd control. You still need to be attacking. Don't just bank all of your damage and be waiting for that freezing trap, because the output of this composition is so high that you want to always be focusing on attacking. Here we use the mass entanglement and solar beam on the healer, which gets mass dispelled. And then my shaman follows up with an earth grab totem root, which prevents the shaman from getting out of the solar beam. And then we can freezing trap, and now there's no mass dispel. And this was a good way for us to get through mass dispel. So root beam gets mass dispelled, shaman root totem into freezing trap was a really good way for us to get around that. Although, because the warrior's playing so defensively, it's becoming quite difficult to be able to execute a kill. Here again, going just for a Starfall to generate as much astral power as I can. It's also just good cleave damage across the board. But with myself at half health, my hunter at half health, I've used Fairy Swarm defensively on the warrior. This can also be a good tactic to bait healers to dispel it, so that you can then access a gladiator's maledict. Although this team has a lot of ways to counter maledict with spell reflect and mass dispel, so I think that I didn't even opt to run it over getting extra damage from a proc trinket and trying to win on attrition, because with the way the warriors is running, basically scared at the pillar the whole game, my shaman's not spending mana, so we're getting all of this time in the world to set up big starfalls, set up bombs in the ground, set up crowd control, and then they're just always running. As long as we're maximizing our damage and maintaining our dots, then this other team is likely going to just run out of mana and start to fall behind. So here the shaman gets gripped in the middle of the map, which puts them in range of me to try and cyclone, so I try to do my best to cyclone the shaman before they can get back to the pillar. But there's obviously quite a bit of disruption to get through on their way, and they ended up running into an old freezing trap, which they ended up trinketing, but I didn't actually know it was there. Healing Tide Totem, which we can see right beside the shaman, is actually a very high priority totem to kill. You want to be paying very close attention to that right now in 9.1, because it does a massive amount of healing with an honor talent that basically every restoration shaman is playing, and it will effectively negate a lot of the pressure that you can develop in the game. Here you see a starburst going on the Shadow Fiend, not too valuable. I use disarm on the warrior here because my hunter was hitting 20% health, so just using that to prevent the warrior from executing. And this is a talent that I don't see a lot of balanced druids running, or at least not very often, but can be a great way to avoid a lot of the high burst moments that are currently prevalent. Here a starburst hits the warrior, just knocking him up into the air, dealing about 10,000 damage, and I push in for that root solar beam, and this is where we're expecting mass dispel, so we either can interrupt it with wind shear, or we can then follow it up with earth grab totem. That way the shaman will stay stuck in crowd control. But because we didn't do the earth grab totem this time around, the shaman actually got mass dispelled out of the freezing trap, which means they're going to be able to heal. Although maybe that's not the end of the world. They're already down at half mana. If the warrior goes behind the pillar, focus your attention and your casts onto the target that isn't behind the pillar. Maximize your damage. So I drop the remainder of my celestial alignment here onto the priest. I see a starburst on the ground, so I pick that up quickly, and I see the priest running into me, so I could run that into the priest. You see, knocking the priest into the air, blasting him down to 30%. And I'm honestly getting kind of unlucky with how many starbursts I'm getting. And this is one of the worst maps for it, because it will spawn starbursts anywhere in your line of sight that can currently be spawned. So standing close to walls will make it only spawn in front of you. That can be a good strategy. Something that I didn't implement necessarily in this clip, but something that I've learned along with the talent over time, where you can get choke points where there's not a lot of places to run, like behind this pillar next to the wall in front of me would be a great place to stand to make sure that you're just summoning bombs into an active area of the fight rather than off in the corner somewhere where no one is currently fighting. So fighting in a corner is a really good idea with this build, because then it just eliminates that quadrant of the map to spawn starbursts. But here the shaman's crowd controlled, so we're going to use a gladiator's maledict. This prevents the assistance healing from the shadow priest and dips them very low, almost to 10%. And almost, I'm not sure if we should definitely have killed them here, I think, but maybe we don't. They live at 10% with dispersion, but you can see the pressure is just constantly developing onto two targets. If the one target that you're chasing is constantly running away and avoiding death, then just switch your attention to somebody else like a turret, and you're going to start pumping that target down. And this is surprisingly one of the more fun compositions I have been playing as a balanced druid, outside of the standard ones that I see at the moment, which have been pretty much only Windwalker balanced druid. So if you're looking for something different, this is definitely a good treat outside of the norm. Here the enemy team is just positioned all behind the pillar, so we're going to triangle position, me on the right, the hunter on the left, try and get as much pressure out as we can, try and start winning on mana. We start the crowd control chain with Root Solar Beam. We use Earth Grab Totem to prevent the shaman from retreating from the Solar Beam after Mass Dispel. But because the shaman is already on trap DR here, it's not going to be of too much consequence to winning the game. We should have honestly waited to go for the freezing trap before trying to execute for a kill. But the warrior's behind the pillar, so we're not going to chase the warrior and stand on top of a warrior. That's a bad idea. We're just going to stay out here and we're going to attack the priest while the warrior is doing nothing. And we're pretty happy about that. We get to keep rising our damage to the top, and the warrior is going to have to explain to his shaman why his damage is so low after the game. So at that point, we want them to position out in the middle of the map. We're baiting them into the corner, and we're just continuing to develop astral power at this point. Fury of Elune, I've actually been choosing to run a bit more, but honestly, actually Full Moon is a talent that if you've watched my stream live is one that I'm cycling in a little bit more. It generates basically 2 star surges over its time being casted through New Moon, Half Moon, and Full Moon, as well as dealing maybe upwards of 10 to 16,000 damage and crit. So if you're looking for really big single target bursts, which is great in this composition, the Full Moon talent is actually a lot of fun, and I've been enjoying it a lot, and you'll see it in future videos as well. So if you've enjoyed these types of videos, definitely make sure you're subscribed to check out more in the future. I also do news updates to bring you as much information about World of Warcraft as I can. Now in this position, Spear of Bastion is down. This red circle is very scary, so I'm going to use Fairy Swarm on the warrior, preventing the warrior from attacking me during his spear. So he is more than very sad at this point, because he's either behind the pillar cowering or has his sword taken away from him, as if he's been grounded like a spoiled child or something by his parents. So he's not having too good of a time at the moment here. But as I start repositioning, I'm going to pull the warrior out into the middle of the map as far as I can. Shackles of Malediction can be dispelled or interrupted with hard crowd control. Here my shaman dispels it. But I can also use Incapacitating Roar as well to prevent its channel, and it's very deadly on a balanced druid. You want to be paying attention to the shackles as much as possible. Here I'm low health, but I wait until the Sharpened Blade is about to fall off. I use Adaptive Swarm on myself. This increases the healing of Frenzied Regen, another great trade-off for balanced druid at the moment, because they've nerfed our defensive survivability by quite a lot. I think you'll notice that you can't just sit in bear form and AFK all day like you could previously. But in this position, you can see we've ran the shaman down to 10% mana. We've been pushing for our crowd control when it's good for us. We've been getting good follow-ups with these Earth Grab Totems, and then if we can secure freezing traps out of these chains, it's going to be really deadly. But in this position, the warriors dropped a banner, and there is a cluster of pets on the ground. It can be very tough to see things like War Banner and Psyfiend, but you really want to pay attention to them because they can basically end the game. But as the warrior is retreating, we're going to go push in right on top of the warrior, try and generate as much astral power as possible to get star surges out while the shaman is in a freezing trap, and try and go for the kill. They kind of disrespect the situation here because now dampening's been in for a minute, but I cyclone the warrior at low health. This prevents the target from being able to be restored as it immunes healing and damage, and the warrior actually trinkets it, which means now the warrior won't be able to trinket a stun potentially in the future, which is going to be good for us, or won't be able to trinket a disarm for a kill. But that Spear of Bastion is down, that red circle, so I'm going to jump into bear form and bark skin, use Iron Fur to boost up my armor, and try and be as tanky as I can because I don't have Fairy Swarm to remove the warrior's weapon. So that's my next final line of defense as a balanced druid, is just going bear form and utilizing all of my guardian abilities. Here I use Mass Entanglement defensively on the priest and the warrior while we go for a stun onto the shaman. The priest grips the shaman away from the freezing trap, but at this point we really don't care. We're going to be attacking anybody we want. The shaman has 10% mana, so if the warrior wants to go over there and, hey, he can go have some fun behind the pillar by himself for all we care at this point, right? We're going to be switching our attention right to the shadow priest, and the shaman's thinking, wow, I got to heal this warrior up that just ran away, but now my priest is at 30%. this is pretty stressful. I don't know how I'm going to deal with this at the moment. And this shaman is probably freaking out. So they're going to drop a Spirit Link Totem to try and recover. And that's the great pressure that this comp brings, as opposed to kind of the standard like Feral Druid Hunter. You wouldn't see this type of damage across multiple targets with the Feral Druid. But with the Balanced Druid, you definitely will. So if you're looking for that kind of rot pressure and that rot archetype that's been kind of lost for a long time right now in World of Warcraft, then this is going to be the composition that you really want to check out. But with them pinned at the pillar, zeroed out mana, we can basically drink, we can dot them, we can rot them, we can do whatever we want really at this point with them, because we're going to have the positional advantage. So my shaman moves to the right, he's going to prevent their escape. My hunter's on the left, I'm just attacking the priest as much as I can, and then this warrior boldly charges out in the middle of the map with half health. And I'm going to immediately solar beam the healer and the priest. So now the warrior's all alone. I have Celestial Alignment available. Drop my Fury of Elune. Wait and kind of see, is anybody going to trinket? I disarm the warrior here just to utilize the slow as they're trying to retreat. And I pop Celestial Alignment and try and tap the warrior with a Star Surge as he goes around the corner. But it didn't end up netting the kill. Then I try and move in, picking up bombs here and bringing them back behind the pillar. We've really decided that it's time to push because they've used Spirit Link Totem. They're all at 10% health. It's time to get on top of them and try and end the game. But because of that, you're going to be vulnerable. So I go into bear form, I bark skin, and I get ready to tank up basically, pretending they're a mythic raid boss, and just let my hunter go away and have at himself here in this position and just wait for their cooldowns to fade. As soon as that Spirit Bastion is over, I'm basically done through the tank phase. We've survived through their void form that was just activated here by the priest, and we survived the Spirit Bastion, which means we can more safely get aggressive. I try to utilize Typhoon to knock the shaman and the warrior off the pillar so they're easier to crowd control. I then try to cycle on the shaman when they're off the pillar. They're of course going to try and stop you, but you still want to try and get it. They utilized Wind Shear to interrupt my cyclone, and now that the shaman is basically completely zeroed out of mana, I'm cycloning the Shadow Priest to just stop any extra utility, any extra off healing or support. And I go for a root on the warrior so that I can cast without them retreating away. And here we go for stun on shaman as well, locking them in place with a freezing trap. And the warrior's thinking, okay, I got 30% health here. I'm blade storming like a ballerina, but I can't really do very much. My shaman is 10% mana. I'm going to ignore pain and desperation and run around the corner and pray that this somehow works and we can pull this off, because this is going to be a very stressful situation. Now the shaman is slowed, left behind, so I want to try and cycle on the shaman if I can. The warrior knows that, so the warrior's going to come back and prevent me from doing it, but I still want to try and go for it whenever I can. And here we've used Adaptive Swarm. We disarm the Spear of Bastion with Fairy Swarm onto the warrior, and if the shaman dispels this disarm, then a Gladiator's Maledict is going to be following up. That's why I really like that Fairy Swarm now as a balanced druid, really in any situation. But Spear of Bastion is down. We're going to respect it. We're going to go into bear form. We're going to tank up our opponents, activate Iron Fur, and try and bolster our defense as much as possible, and really drag this fight out. But you can see shamans don't really want to go down without a fight. Like this guy is still kicking deep into dampening with 10% remaining mana for quite some time. So you've got to be ready against these shamans for fights to go on for quite some time. Here we use the Mass Entanglement into the Earth Grab to hold the shaman in the beam. And then if we get a freezing trap out here, this warrior is all alone. And look at my little Starburst on the ground right here. Let's go pick that thing up. And oh no, the warrior ran away from it. Feels bad. He 100% would have died to that, and it's actually very satisfying when you get a kill with it. But the shaman is scared, right? Because the warrior's behind the corner, very low health. Here we get a Starburst spawn onto the priest. Finally, we're getting some good RNG with this. But as soon as that warrior's gone around the corner, it's time to swap targets over to the priest and get our pressure going onto a secondary target. And we dip the priest so low that they almost die through Disperse. And then now that the warrior's charged out, thinking, oh, the priest is the target. No, 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 no. There's still more damage for you, good sir or madame. And we immediately switch to the warrior, blasting him down to 10%. And you can see you can play this comp for burst and for setups. You can play this comp for attrition and survival. It's very adaptive and powerful in both regards, and well-rounded, honestly. And I've overall enjoyed my time with the composition, even though it's one that a lot of people I think would expect to just be a complete bust. With the Starburst talent, especially on smaller maps against melee cleaves, you will have a very good time playing it. Trust me, I've really enjoyed playing against the melee cleaves in particular with it, and I'm going to be getting some clips of that up here as well. So if you're interested in checking out that type of content, then make sure you're subscribed. And other than that, thank you very much for watching the video today. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, leave it with a thumbs up. Comment down below with your thoughts. What are you looking to check out? Is 9.1.5 intriguing you at all to check out and come back to the game? Because I've been having a lot of fun at the moment playing unique compositions like this. And you can just look at the scoreboard too, right? Like this poor warrior, 500,000 damage. He's only like twice my Resto Shaman. This comp will own melee. You will definitely have a great time. So definitely check it out. On that, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.